Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Christina Caesar, and I manage marketing and communications at Synergy Technical, and I will be moderating today's session. Today's webinar will be an overview and interactive demo of the latest and greatest to happen in the Microsoft 365 Productivity Suite. We'd love for this session to be as interactive as possible, so please make sure to send any questions to the Q&A function within Teams. And just a little bit about us. Synergy Technical is an IT consulting firm headquartered in Richmond, Virginia. We have clients in over 70 countries in all 50 states and manage over 2 million licenses of Microsoft 365 for our clients through our licensing and managed services practice. In February of 2020, we were awarded the Microsoft 365 Security Deployment Partner of the Year Award. And a large part of that success is the work done by today's presenter, Adrian Amos. So Adrian is one of our best sales engineers and solution architects who has deep level experience in the Microsoft suite, both productivity and security, and who's had the honor of running customer immersion experience workshops at Microsoft Ignite for several years, as well as present at other conferences and expos across the country. And with that, I will hand things over to you, Adrian. If you want to start sharing your screen, we can kick things off.
I will do that. Thank you so much, Christina. I always appreciate it. Your kind introductions. So we are going to be spending our day today actually looking at one of the most exciting pieces of the future of productivity, and that is we'll be in Windows 365 for this. If you're not familiar with Windows 365, this is Microsoft's addition to the VDI infrastructure, or the virtual desktop experience solution that they introduced back in August of last year. We've seen this vastly transform the way that people are able to interact with Windows because it allows us to basically take Windows anywhere, right? We can shut the lid on our machine, and generally that would mean that our processes go to sleep while we're transitioning from work to the off or to home or to wherever. But Windows 365 is running in the cloud. It's always on. It's persistent. You never have to worry about your sessions ending. So one of the great things that it enables is very easy demos. I can keep my machines running and have all my processes running and know that they're going to be exactly where they were when I left them, anytime I come back to them. So all that is to say, we're operating in Windows 365 today for the purposes of this demo, and it makes it so much easier for me to isolate my user experience in that space from my actual real Synergy machine. So the first thing we do in any given standard day is we generally come in and we check email. Now, we're very accustomed to the concept of opening up Outlook. We've been working in Outlook for what, 15, 20, 30 years in some cases. But there are probably some things that Outlook has supported for a very long time that maybe they don't get really well publicized, right? Maybe some things that you haven't seen, or maybe some opportunities to reduce your interactions with Outlook on a day-to-day basis to help streamline the way that you work. So one of the first things that we generally talk about when we deal with Outlook is that we, or at least I, am not a huge fan of email. I would like to receive far less email than I do. And part of that is moving from traditional communication systems like email into more of a fluid, like a chat-based solution, like what we'll get to in Teams in a little bit. But in order to get to that point, we have to first be able to figure out what's important and what's fluff. And so what we strongly recommend is if you haven't spent a lot of time looking through the view options that exist in Outlook, it's worth a look, right? We can change the way that things appear in here. We can change the way they appear in different folders. But the most important one that I really like to start with is, if you're not familiar with it already, it's Show as Conversations. Now, this is one that most people have been aware of for years, but interestingly, even now, even in 2022, after 20-some years of having threads visible in mail systems, this one still creates a philosophical argument in a lot of environments, which is why it's a per user setting that you can choose to turn on or off. But if you do choose to turn it on, you get some really interesting functionality that's not just having the conversation nested and threaded and brought up to the top when somebody makes a new comment on it. One of the things you get the ability to do is some really cool stuff like ignore, which is right down here. So if I decide that there's too much content around, let's say, the donuts in the break room conversation, I'm not in the office, right? I'm not going to be able to eat these delicious donuts. And as people start replying back, as they always do with reply all, that they are not seeing their favorite flavor or whatever, I don't want to deal with this, right? I want to ignore this conversation. And what's going to happen now is that every future message on this thread is going to automatically be sent to the trash. There you go. Easy way to just sort of dial out the fluff. It's an easy way to ignore a conversation. It is literally ignore a conversation. And what's nice is that if somebody decides that they want to put their, their annual salary review document as a reply to the donuts in the break room, you can still get it back. It's just in the trash. So, all right, threaded view is great. It shows conversations is great. The next philosophical question that we get into with people is, what is your comfortable inbox number and what do you do about it, right? So for me, my comfortable inbox number is 0. And if you're one of those who has an unread count of thousands, my hat's off to you. I don't know how you operate on a day-to-day basis. I can't do it. My anxiety goes up if this number of unread messages goes off the screen. So this is actually already making me tense. I like to keep it at 0, but then I have to be able to do something with that email. So removing that number or moving it down to 0 means I have to have functionally done something with this content, right? I have to have resolved my need to keep it unread or to even keep it in the inbox. And what we've seen is a lot of organizations that'll move toward using folders to nest things, but once things are hidden in folders, they're not quite always as directly searchable because our searching capabilities, while they now do exist at the top root, we can also search inside of individual folders. So what we've seen some folks having great success doing is if you right click on these guys, you can use categories. And you can see these categories they can have custom names. So we can come in and actually make changes to what our categories are, change the colors. And then what's nice is that when we go to actually sort by these things, we can sort by any number of different factors that we want to. So if there's a specific category that we want to sort, have all of our conversations with the outside customers or whatever come to the top, we can easily do that. So email, right, email's great. We want to generally move out of email into some other method of having a conversation. And so the question next becomes, how do we escalate conversations? How does an email go toward becoming a meeting? And in our company, we actually have a hard and fast rule that's existed since I've been here, 10 years now, that no conversation can go more than 3 emails before it's time to pick up the phone or transition or escalate this conversation to something a little bit more interactive. If you haven't been able to communicate the intent within 3 emails, you're not going to communicate it with 50 emails, right? So we need to be able to escalate this. Now, here's Annemiek saying, let's meet. And I have the option to simply hit Teams and turn this into schedule a meeting with Annemiek in Teams. But we also have had the ability for a long time, and it's been a hidden feature, to reply as a meeting here in Outlook. And this is not functionally different from reply with Teams, but it's a button that's been there and a lot of folks don't know it. What's nice about this, though, is that I don't have to send out an email saying, do you have time to meet? When would be a good time to meet? Can we look at these particular times that are available? We can skip all of that by simply replying with a meeting, and it's actually going to pre-add all of the content that's relevant to the meeting, and it's going to start looking at times that might work for the folks that are here. So this is great. And anybody who's used Outlook for years is probably familiar with a lot of this functionality, but I actually want to stop using Outlook entirely. I want to get out of the business of using Outlook, and I want to use some slightly more forward-thinking methods, right? So Microsoft has done a lot of work of closing the feature parity gap between Outlook, the installed application, and Outlook on the web, to the point where I actually believe that Outlook on the web is a far better product. So here we have that same conversation going with Annemiek, right? She's saying that we need to meet. I have the same set of capabilities. I can reply here as a meeting. It's automatically going to do a reply all as a meeting. It's going to pull the same, anybody who was already in this conversation into this reply. And this is where it's going to get more powerful than Outlook did as a FAT32 app once it resolves and allows me to load the page. All right, here we go. Bear with it a second. Here we go. Now we have a little bit of a different view, right? Where in Outlook, the installed version only showed the contents that were there. This one is now actually showing me a calendar view and shows everyone's availability integrated into one single view. And it's also going to pick suggested times that it thinks that would probably be a great thing. Now, I'm not going to put anything on somebody's calendar that's going to butt up against 4 o'clock if I don't have to. I'm going to pick this time here. It's automatically going to turn on that it's a Teams meeting. It's automatically going to add all of the existing content that has gone on in this conversation. If there were 100 emails, it would all be right there. If there were attachments, they would all be right there. And it's as easy as simply hitting send, and now it's going to show up on everybody's calendar. It's going to automatically be scheduled. It's automatically going to set all of the appointment reminders. Now, I scheduled that event to happen in Teams. Now, we're still in the Outlook tool set, and I'm going to be able to see that this meeting is in my Outlook calendar, but we're going to jump in just a second and show you that that same event is actually going to also be in my Teams calendar, because my Teams calendar is actually my Outlook calendar. So they are the actual same thing, simply rendered in different environments. Here's my meeting that's coming up this afternoon. And I can get in and see that there's join, I can chat with participants in advance. That's something that wasn't available to me in Outlook. So let's talk about what Teams is and how it's positioned to replace a lot of the day-to-day functionality that we've done in Outlook. I imagine that most folks that are on this call have probably worked with Teams or Slack or some sort of a chat-based communication structure. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to identify like I said, the day-to-day nitty-gritty, getting in there, doing stuff, and remove it from the formal structure of email where we must first type a subject and we must choose no, we're not doing that. We're just going to send a chat to a group of people, and it can be a predetermined group of people, a team, or it can be an individual person, or we can add people to our individual conversations. And we're going to keep it kind of a little bit informal and loosey-goosey in terms of the flow of information. But what's great is that we'll always be able to go back to everything that's already happened in this conversation so that we can quickly get back up to speed and catch back up. So what is Teams? Well, Teams is exactly that. It is groups of people organized into a structure that makes sense for you, presented in a format where you can see the name of the team, channels that exist for the team. We can expose different security levels for different channels of the team. We can see where things are read or unread. And then each one of these channels is also going to have a series of tabs across the top. Now, for my OneNote users in the group, this is going to look very familiar to how OneNote has been organized for quite some time. Every channel is going to comprise posts, files, and wiki. The posts are simply everything that happens in the team gets turned into a post so everybody can find it and get up to speed quickly. Our files, this is SharePoint. These are SharePoint files that are simply presented into this Teams channel. And we know it's SharePoint because here it says open in SharePoint, right? We have a direct access to getting to these files where they actually natively reside inside of SharePoint. But what's really neat is they don't have to be in SharePoint, right? If we already have an existing third-party file structure somewhere, we can actually add cloud storage and support cloud storage from SharePoint, Dropbox, Box, Ignite, ShareFile, Google. And this becomes team storage for everyone who has access to this team. And then we can go in and open these files. We can do all the normal SharePoint functions that we're familiar with our files, all the way down to and including checkout, which I generally don't recommend. But we can also make these files working documents for the rest of our team. So I've taken this particular one and I have made it a tab. Maybe I need to take this sample text document and pin it to the top, right? I want people to know this is the one that's important for this week. But once a document has been added as a tab, when I click on it, Teams is actually going to open this file in a native renderer for this application. And it's going to honor all the rules that come from that FAT32 instance of that app, whether it's restricting certain people from having access rights to edit, or even if it's modifying, who can make comments. The comments that are made in one space will come into the other. We can have people real-time co-authoring both inside this tab, in this channel, in this team, in this view, while somebody else is running Excel on their desktop, and we'll be able to see which cell they're editing in and make real-time collaboration changes with them, and actually even have chats at the same time around this file as things are evolving in place. So we have all this great capability that we can deal with just this one file, but we can add so much more to our channel. We talk with folks that are building websites, right? It's a great opportunity if you're working on building a website to then also pin that website. So you can just flip back and forth between your view of what you're working on to your view of how it's actually evolving in real time. We can add YouTube videos, specifically YouTube videos to be presented as people click on it. So if there's something that's really important, we can get users to that data quickly. And there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other apps that can be pinned directly to the top of this channel. So a channel can comprise just about anything we want it to that our users in this team need to be productive working in this environment. So let's talk a little bit about how we manage that, right? If we look at manage the team, and if we happen to be an owner of the team, we can get in and see a lot of great information about what's going on here. We can easily see who our owners are. We can easily see who our members are. We can actually add external users as guests to this team. And if I add them as a guest to this team, that doesn't mean they get access to any of these other teams. So it's isolated, it's restricted, and we can protect and decide what a guest user will be able to do within each one of these channels too. We can see if people are requesting access to it, because this is not like traditional Active Directory group structures or whatever group structures we're used to. Users can actually request access and owners can approve that access. And then we can decide how channels are allowed to be created and operated in here. Do we want to show channels to everybody that's here? Do we want to be able to get back to channels that have been deleted and restore them? What do we need to be able to do? Do we need to, manage the channel, actually even add third-party or special custom connectors? And those are, we'll get to that in a bit if we have time, because there's so much in Teams, right? We can change the team picture, we can change permissions, and actually this is another philosophical argument that we get into. What should a guest be allowed to do within your team? Should a guest be able to delete content from your teams, right? So we can control all of that. Do we want users to be able to do fun stuff like typing with emojis and all that stuff? And then are they actually engaging with it, right? We can see, hey, it looks like people are using it a little bit, right? We expected better engagement with this. So one of the biggest questions that we get from organizations that are looking to move toward Teams is, how do I actually get people to engage with it? Well, here you go. Here's your analytics built in right here. And then we can also decide that specific applications need to be available to it. We can add custom tags. And then once we actually get into the teams themselves, we can decide who has access, right? So we talked about who our users are that have access into this team. We can get into the actual channel content itself and decide what permissions people need to be able to have to it. And then again, just like we had analytics for the whole team, now we have analytics for the channel. So we've got all this stuff going on here, right? We've even had hidden channels that we can isolate so that only certain subsets of people get access to. But once they're in here and they're operating, they're just chatting, right? They can create a new conversation. They can mention people, so they can say let's say Annemiek, right? And it's going to automatically resolve the names of these people, so I can ask for their help with stuff. And that's going to notify Annemiek that she has something specific that needs to happen. And we can now escalate from this conversation directly into a meeting here. And that's a step that doesn't exist in Outlook. I can go straight from talking about the thing in the channel directly to meeting. And I can schedule it or I can meet now. The really neat thing here too is that if I schedule a meeting inside this channel and I have this meeting in Teams and my users are able to chat on the side as the meeting is ongoing, when this meeting is over, that chat stays visible with the meeting in the notes for the remainder of the duration of this channel. So people can keep the conversation going even after the meeting is over and have it tied back to the meeting. So we don't have that mental disconnect between what we were talking about in the meeting and what we were talking about in the chat. They're the same thing. They're actually the same thing and they're tied to each other. So we can get back to it in a hurry. But we can also hover over these people's name hover over their names, and we're going to get a quick contact card. And we can do really quick information or quick actions like schedule it or start a chat with them or find out who they work for, what's their position within the company organization, or we can do a video call or a phone call directly with these people. I can send in a quick message from right here. I can get her email. I can even see what her time zone is. And this is really cool if you're dealing with international teams and you want to make sure that you're being sensitive not to hit people after hours. There are some places where that's just an inconvenience, and there are some places where it's a legal liability. So we want to make sure that we understand what our capabilities are and what the other person's capabilities are too. And then of course we have, org structure right here. So I want to dig in a little bit and I want to look at Annemiek. And what that's going to do is it's going to take me out of the team view and throw me straight into the chat view. And here we have an organizational view of Annemiek. I can see who she works for. Here's all the chat history automatically taken to that one same unified view of any time I've worked with Annemiek. I'm going to be able to see the chats that we've shared. Any files that have been shared directly between us will actually be evident here as well. Again, I can go back to her organizational structure. And if I have a situation where a user says, hey, do you remember when we were talking about such and such? And you're like, I do not remember where that conversation was. Instead of digging through 50 or 100 teams to try to figure out where it is, I can actually get directly back to where Annemiek and I have interacted. It's a simple, quick view of where to go from this. Now, what's great here is I can turn this directly into that conversation, right? Or I can decide that I need more people to come join us for lunch. I'm going to need George right there. He's visible. I'm going to now add him to this conversation. And now, actually, it turns out that's already an existing conversation that I have. And teams recognize that. When I've talked to Annemiek and George before, we actually created a new, like a private team, if you will, a group name. And we gave it, or we created a group, we gave it a name, and now the entire chat history of that, even if I accidentally type the same people's names, it's going to put me back into that same space. I'm going to be able to see there's that document that was evident in the chat. And look, I can do the same stuff here that I could do inside the team itself. I can pin that document such that it becomes a tab inside my team. So I can do any number of things that I want to operate with this kind of stuff just about any way I want to come at it. And then if we come back through here a little bit, we have our activity. So what are the things that we've missed, whether it's something within inside a team or something that's happened within a chat, however we want to get to it. If you have a calling plan in your teams, you'll actually be able to see, phone history and voicemail and all that kind of fun stuff is sitting here too. But one of my favorite things that exists in Teams, and it really solves a lot of problems for me, is I mentioned you don't remember where you had the conversation with the user, but sometimes you just don't know where the file is, right? I mean, Windows saves my bacon all the time by showing me recent files, but if those files were worked on a different computer, maybe I don't get access to those recent files unless I'm on, office.com. Well, with Teams, it's going to show me my recent files, whether they are inside my OneDrive or inside of a Teams channel, or even if there are in the downloads on this actual computer. So I can actually get quick access back to recent files, downloads on my computer, any file that I have access to anywhere inside of Teams at all. So if I need to get quickly up to speed with something I've been working on recently, I can see that they're all going to be, recent documents, recent modification, all that fun stuff is there. I can see who's been working on it, all that great stuff. But I can also, just like I did within my team itself, I can see what other cloud storage I have access to. And I can't remember if my user here has a Google Drive. I think he does. Oh, yep, there we go. It's going to ask me to sign in as Carl. But I can also add additional cloud storage, right? So if I have personal Dropbox, right? You've come to a new company, you've got a lot of working documents, they're in Dropbox, you got to move some of it over into your new environment. Well, we can actually just natively mount it up here and then work with it as if it were just part of our normal Teams environment. So a lot of easy ways to get back to the files that we're accustomed to working with. And then there's more, right? So there's so much more stuff that can be pinned to the left-hand side of Teams. And we've got Viva, and we've got Power Automate, we've got all these fun things that exist here. But if I hit this more apps, it's going to take me into this ridiculously huge app catalog of content that exists out here in Teams, all of which can be natively rendered into Teams, right? So we have things that we have actually things that are created by our own colleagues that can be surfaced into here too. So we have the ability to create Power Apps and use those as native team apps. We can actually also even write our own custom bots, and that becomes important because if we go to the search bar and hit /, we're going to get a list of all the things that we can do very quickly from search. And if you don't rely on the search bar, I'm going to tell you you're missing out on a lot of capability, because Maybe I want to say away, and it's going to change my status up here instantly to my status being set to away. And it's a little bit quicker for me than coming over here and trying to, hover over the little teeny tiny dots. I can go do all kinds of fun stuff. If I type / again, it's going to show me who are all the folks, and I can make myself offline. I can go straight to all of my unread activity, right? I can get all this great stuff that sits here. I'm not going to set myself to do not disturb, but I mean, I can call somebody directly from the search bar, right? It's pretty cool. And then let's see, what is the other one that we can do? Sorry. My brain gets a little overwhelmed sometimes. So as I mentioned that we have bots that exist in here too, right? Here is a bot. So I typed /who, right? You can see that's in the history here. And what that's going to do is it's going to fire up this bot. And I've asked the bot in the past, who are these people, right? I can simply, allow it again, just for funsies. And it's going to allow me to ask questions about people in the organization. So I can say, who is Graham Chapman? I can remember to type it right. And if I hit go, and I haven't deleted that user, who is Graham Chapman? The bot thinks about it for a second. Here's what I found about him. Here we go. He's an executive. I can figure out exactly who he works with. I've got all that same content card information at a quick glance. Oh, doesn't work with anybody. Who are his peers? Right, but I'm interacting with a bot right now. The bot's doing all the work in the back end. Let's see, who does he work with? Maybe he doesn't even work with anybody. Oh, he doesn't report to anyone. He is an executive. So there you go. But we can get all this fun stuff just natively by interacting with bots. And like I said, you can actually write your own bots. There's the ability in here to empower users to create their own bots. And in my previous demo environment, I had one where you could ask it how much vacation time do I have remaining, and it would query a database and find out and report back to the user. So super simple HR tasks that were easily automated. And that brings us to another interesting point too. So obviously these teams had to have been created at some point. Well, if I hit join or create a team, it's going to give me the ability to join any existing team that's already out there that I don't have yet, or I can create teams from templates. And if I want to do something like an HR team, or maybe, create any number of things, right? There's all these different teams that exist out here, or templates that exist out here. So let's see, I'm going to onboard employees. I think I might actually already have done this at some point, but by clicking on that template, it's going to pre-create for me channels. It's going to pre-add applications to this team so I can get up and running quickly without a lot of overhead. And again, we can add external users, we can do whatever we need to, but this is a super simple way of getting people up and chatting and moving data and working with things very quickly, very easily. And it's all just as easy to do in the web as it is to do within the actual application, right? So we spent time looking at how Outlook looks on the web. Well, we can do Teams in the web too. Now, Teams in the web always wants to throw you back into the client if it has it installed, but it's not going to force you to. So anything that you can do on an application, you can also do in the cloud. And what's really neat about that is that Microsoft announced a week and a half ago that they're going to give us the ability in the future for Windows 11 users who have Microsoft Edge on a personal device to add a work profile and gain access to corporate resources simply by a managed profile. So we don't have to give IT control over our personal device anymore. We can simply add a profile in Edge and it keeps all of that stuff nice and tidy in a box, right? And so here's exactly the same content we were just looking at as a standalone application, now loaded as a web page. And what's cool is I can take a web page and load it inside the web page, right? So we pinned the Washington Post as a web page to exist inside of this Teams channel. Here's the post rendered inside of the channel, rendered inside of Edge. So we can just keep on nesting all the way down, right? Super easy to do. But Edge or Teams also has a lot of great capabilities around planning and management or event management. So we have in here tasks by planner, right? And task management is an area where users have traditionally struggled with Outlook as a product, right? They don't integrate with the calendar view. They don't work super great, but Planner gives us a Microsoft Office tool set that allows us to do light project management with a calendar view. And what it allows us to do is view tasks that are assigned to us, show where those tasks come from. We can dig in and actually see what all the tasks are that pertain to, well, here we go, that pertain to us, that pertain to our team. And if we want to kind of get out of this view and actually look at it in the web, we have tasks.office.com, and inside of this view, we're going to have a lot of different capabilities here. We have our traditional Kanban board style task management, right? So I can add a lot of tasks, I can create a bunch of buckets, I can go into my tasks and I can mark things as being complete. I can dig into these things, I can assign them out to other users, I can add notes, I can actually add attachments and files to this. I can do pretty much whatever I want to with it. And then once we can see we've got some overdue elements here too, I can actually view this as a chart so I can see, you know, why are things falling behind? Well, it looks like Carl has more assignments than anybody else and he's behind. So what do I want to do with these? I can actually open these tasks up, reassign them, and that way I can make sure that things are not slipping through the cracks because maybe Carl's on vacation, right? We don't know. But we can also then take this whole thing and view it as a schedule. And then we can do the most coolest thing in the entire world, add the plan to the Outlook calendar, right? So I've done this already for this particular one. My user is in their Outlook calendar. They want to add some group calendars. Let's see, is it going to work for me? Let me scroll down. I may need to refresh my view here. Try this again, because I know this was working just a few minutes ago. Live and die by the demo, right? All right, so I've got my calendar here. Get it to work. And here we go, from Planner, event coordination. So now I have two calendars overlaid in the same view inside my Outlook calendar. And the great thing is that these events aren't throwing notifications at me all the time, right? Unless I want them to, they're not throwing notifications at me. So I can see them and I can overlay them and they're going to come up with a different color. And that is going to also happen for me inside of Outlook, right? This is not restricted to Outlook on the web. I have subscribed to this calendar with my Outlook and I will be able to get back to it also inside of my Outlook Win32 app. Right there, you can see here's the same calendar. It's overlaid. If I don't want it to be overlaid, I can actually separate it out and put them side by side. And what's really neat here too is that I can also decide that I want to overlay this and also add in some coworkers' calendars so I can see how everybody's working. It's basically a really light project management view of Outlook calendaring. But we can also then, once we're inside a planner, we can actually come up to what's called the Planner Hub, and it will show us a high-level view of all the plans that we have subscribed to or that we want to see in our environment. I can pin these to the top. Once I pin them to the top, I get this 50,000-foot view. And if I had more plans in here, you'd see some of them would be in different states of completion and all that kind of fun stuff. And then again, I can come straight back to those things that are assigned to me. Now, these are the tools that I use on a daily basis, right? I am always in Outlook. I am always dealing with email. I am always dealing with chat, and I am always dealing with tasks. And Microsoft has allowed us to choose how we want to engage with these tool sets, but they do have some recommendations. What they defined a couple of years ago, maybe even 3 or 4 years ago at this point, was we want to do what's called inner circle and outer circle communications. In general, when we are dealing with inner circle communications, our working group of people that we work with day to day, we want to try to keep that inside of Teams. When we're doing outer circle communications, we're communicating with a broader audience, maybe people outside the organization, also people who are internal to us, maybe it's the whole organization. In those cases, and not all of them, but in some of those cases, we're going to generally do that in Outlook. Now, I like it, but I actually think that there's an opportunity to improve it, because one of the challenges that we get into, especially with HR documentation, is that if somebody gets onboarded, you then have to send them a flurry of files, right? Here's the employee handbook. Here's the updates to the employee handbook. Here's all this, that, and the other, right? What if we could just get away from that? what if when somebody joined the company, we just automatically had them added to the group that gets them access to the team, that then shows them the files that are evergreen because we have version history and version control, and we have single instance storage that's in SharePoint, so we don't have to worry about shipping copies of the file back and forth with 2022 version Rev 2, 2022 version final, no, this time for real final. We get rid of all of that. We have users, they get added to a group, they get access to the content is evergreen, and we don't have to email them any more employee handbooks. And we can actually even also build in approval processes too, and make sure that people actually see things, because we get actual feedback on when people see stuff and all that great stuff, right? We can force people to do things like that, give it a thumbs up when you see this message, right? We see that pretty regularly. So those are kind of the ways that we tend to align communications and productivity. But I also want to step back a little bit too, and I did say that when we started this, we were doing all of this in Windows 365. And what that really allows me to do is bypass the limitations that exist of me presenting this entire event solely on this machine. And I can actually, if I want to, take my phone out here, fire up the Windows or the remote desktop client on this machine. Let's see, I'm going to add my user here. Remember how to get my user in here. I'm typing in my username. Go. Brain. Okay. My user is in here. I'm going to go back and add a computer to it. Scan again. Now that it's looking for my users that can exist for this user. Come on. I got to get the URL for it, but I can, without wasting any more time, I can add Carl's computer directly to my phone and actually drop this session, move it straight to my phone. He'll be able to keep moving as if he were still on the computer. And it works, right? We've live demoed it. It's super duper easy to do. Unfortunately, I had to rebuild my environment since the last time I did it, but that wasn't the fault of Windows 365. That was the fault of my phone falling. Anyway, so we have all these great capabilities, right? And again, Windows 365 gives me the ability not just to keep the session persistent, but if I recognize that this computer itself is deficient in any way, it doesn't have enough memory or hard drive or processor to run the workloads that I need, I can actually give my user the ability to resize it automatically so they can get a larger machine, or I can have it even scale down. And it's 100% super duper easy to do. I can get to it from Mac OS, Windows, from Android. There's new clients coming out for it all the time that are giving us the ability to do things like consume the Windows Hello integrate passwordless authentication and send us directly into the user. And Microsoft has also announced that we'll be able to soon boot straight from the machine turned off in our hand, log in straight to Windows 365. So we're redefining the way that we are productive with our Windows application workloads, right? So Windows itself is now part of the productivity tool set. All right, so we've gone through the basics of how we use these productivity tools, how we can integrate all of them into Teams. We can actually remove the installed applications on a lot of these instances. We have revised whiteboard capabilities and all kinds of really cool stuff that exists in these areas. What I want to know is what questions can I answer? What are areas where you're seeing challenges? I would love to get some comments in the chat. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to actually look at the chat, so I'm going to see if I can reopen it over here. And I'm going to ask Christina if she is seeing anything out here.
Hey, so we do not have any questions in the chat yet, so we can give everybody a minute. Or if there are actually, I have a question. Are there any super secret fun tips in other Teams or Outlook that you personally love that aren't included in kind of the generic demos? What's your favorite kind of secret?
Honestly, my favorite is probably one of the hardest to do in a demo, but let me take a swing at it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire up another browser. So this is on my physical computer. This is not inside of my Windows 365 machine. And I'm going to go to portal.office.com, and I'm going to log in as a different user in this environment. And as Annemiek, I'm going to go in and open a file. And let's see, I've got this pseudo Latin file here. Now you can see I'm not going into this through Teams, right? I'm just going straight in through SharePoint, and I'm looking at this file, and you can see it's all a bunch of junk Latin, right? Now I've got a notification because I'm on my personal computer that says my organization doesn't allow me to download, print, or sync using this device. So that comes down to some conditional access policies and rules that are set in SharePoint. But I want to make a comment here inside the SharePoint view on my personal computer, not at all in Teams. Hey, Carl, right? Help me with this. And I'm going to assign this to Carl. So a few things are going to happen here. First of all, Annemiek is actually working inside this file right now. That's a thing that's happening. Okay, so I'm going to move her over to this screen, and I'm going to come over here in Teams as Carl, looking at the file in its native rendered view inside of Teams. Okay, and what's going to happen here in just a moment is, aha, here it is. This little AV says Annemiek van Vleuten has the document open. Okay, if I click on her name, it tells me she's on page 4. And if I click on go to location, it takes me directly to where she is actually working inside the document right now. This is my favorite thing in the entirety of the productivity suite, because one of our customers deals with FDA regulation, and their process of modifying documents was to ship printed copies of multi-100,000 page files.
Oh my gosh.
Back and forth, work on edits, put it all back together and ship it off. Now, I've got Annemiek's view over here on my other monitor that you can't see, but I'm going to change that to, let's make it bold. I'm going to make this whole section bold here and italicize it. I did that on a different screen in a different session. Instantly, you saw the changes happen here too. If Annemiek wants to delete that content, now it's gone, right? So that's all fantastic, but that means that we also have to have some sort of a version control on here too. And so we can actually go into the version history on this file and reset it back to before Annemiek made these changes. But at any time, I can see who all is in this document, who has it open for editing. I can actually reach in and communicate directly with Annemiek about these things that are happening in here. You can see we had a previous conversation where I asked her to help translate and she told me, no, go learn Latin, right? But I can have a conversation inside the file. I can have a conversation inside the channel so that other people can participate in it. And that, if I make a reply here, see, here we go. Here's Carl now getting the task of helping with the file, reported into Outlook, sending me back into Teams to look at the file. But all of it is native. All of it is fluid. It all just works. It all just sends me right back through to where I need to go. But if I make this hello comment here, that's going to show up not just here, but it's also going to go back and show up in the posts around this. So anybody ever coming back to it, right there, there we go, right? So even though these things are happening anywhere that I want them to, they're all reporting back to each other. They're all transitioning. The user's experience flows through from one to the other, and the user can get back to things very quickly, very easily, and keep on going as if nothing has happened.
That was awesome. Honestly, I didn't even know that, and I feel like we've done a lot of these. So I'm still not seeing any questions in the Q&A chat, but I'll give everybody a second and I'll just say thank you while we're waiting. But Adrian, crushed it as always.